Today I'm going to be talking about the rule of motion. What's the rule of motion, you're probably wondering, and I'll get into that in a second, but I'm first going to start with a quick story of mine to introduce it, and then we'll get straight into it. So, I've noticed this a lot. People say, oh, one doesn't hurt, one can't harm you. Do it one time, it's fine, because it can't hurt you. But that's the problem. It tricks you. This is a trick that will pull you into it. And it will make you think that it won't hurt and that it will be once. But the problem is the motion it sets forth, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. As you probably already guessed from the introduction and from the story I just told you guys, is that I'm going to be talking about the motion put forth by the first time you try something, or oh, it's only once. Oh, it's this only one time. A lot of people, when you're dieting, when you're doing something strict, tell you, oh, you can make an exception, right? Oh, you do this once. But the problem is, when you do it once, it will set forth a motion, creating an addiction or creating a negative habit for you, which is really dangerous to you. So you should avoid it. And I understand it can be okay in some cases, that exception. But the problem is when the exception no longer is the exception and turns into the norm and turns into a habit. Because what's special about an exception is it's only once, it's only this rare occasion. But most of the time, people use this too often or too early. So for example, what I would recommend to you is when you're doing something strict and you want to have this strict diet or the strict thing you're on, don't make an exception for the first half a year. Don't make an exception for the first year. Don't make an exception for a prolonged period of time. Because that way you've built up enough fortitude against it, you know your own limits, and you should also know know of yourself if you're prone to eating it too much. Because in the early stages you don't know this. You might think you do, oh, I can only take one and then I'll stop and I'll never eat one, for example, or not for another month. But you know this isn't true. You know you'll say this a lot of times. And in the end, it will put forth that motion and you will just keep on doing it. And it recreates that habit, which you tried to force out of it after a hard month of work. And it was entirely ruined by this one time. So you need to keep on being strict with yourself and being disciplined until the moment where you know your own boundaries and you can say, you know what, this one cake on my birthday, for example, I'll take one slice of this cake and that's enough for me. I've done this for a year. I know if I take one, it will be alright. It's an exception. It's on this occasion. And that's how you should use that rule. The rule of motion. Think about this when you're doing something and when you want to make an exception. Is it worth making an exception? Am I currently ready to make an exception? Do I have the mental fortitude to keep it at an exception and not turn it into a habit? If that's all been considered, then you can make an exception, and an exception can be extremely great. So, that's a quick story I wanted to share with you guys, and it's something you should think about and could help you improve your own life and your own self-improvement habits. So thank you guys for watching. Work hard, stay hard, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye!